Okay, Ms. Klutz, you have the podium, and tell us what you have to tell us about the athletic facility needs.
Thank you. We've provided you with some information from last meeting, and hopefully we've answered your questions. We'll take any questions that you have and try to address those at this time, but we were bringing this back to the table that the board tabled, I think, back in March.
Thank you, Ms. Klutz. Yeah, we've talked about it a number of times, and we've received the latest priority list for the high schools, that type thing. And part of a board chair's responsibilities, as all of you know, is to try to bring consensus on any items so that we don't have rock throwings and, those kind of things, heated exchanges or whatever. We try to keep things on an even keel and come up with some type of a compromise. And what I wanted to do, and I talked to some of the board members today, and I feel like certainly that if the vote was brought to the board the way it's presented here, that each 5 high schools get $57,400, I feel certain that the vote would fail. And so I didn't want to see that happen because I felt like that something does need to be done in the line of athletics. Some schools have more needs than others. Some high schools have more needs than other high schools. And so anyway, what I was going to propose, and I want the board to feel free to openly discuss this. I mean, we're going to be here a while tonight anyway. I'm not wanting to be here at midnight, but anyway, I want to give the board an opportunity to speak their piece on this because this is an action item and we're going to vote on this here in a little bit. But the suggestion that I throwed out there, we're talking about $287,000 that we have that we want to use to go toward something. Athletics was what we thought would be good initially, and then all of these other needs and stuff coming staring us down the face, and we know that there's more tons and tons and tons of needs out there that there's just no funds for, and some of these issues are health and safety. There's no doubt need to be taken care of, security, health, safety, those type things. But the idea that I was going to bring, the 57.4, I think is totally, it totally won't go. But I'd like to see us do something for the high schools that haven't had anything done in a number of years, particularly Central Cabarrus and Mount Pleasant. And then, of course, we made a commitment to J. Robinson. J. Robinson, those parents got busy. They raised up $75,000, $80,000 in their boosters and parent-teacher organizations. And of that fund, they probably still got around $60,000, somewhere thereabout, that they still got. The county commission seen the need there, and for whatever reason other than the need, they appropriated $300,000 for that, and so that'll give them somewhere around $360,000 to work with. But see, nothing's been done for the other schools that have needs as well. Now, the proposal that I have is that we set aside, of the $287,000, that we set aside $25,000, maybe $30,000 for Central Cabarrus and for Mount Pleasant High School, and then also an amount equal to that, but not to exceed $30,000 for J. Robinson High School. And then if the bid that we're waiting on should come in, that they don't need the full $30,000 to meet the bid to construct their field house, then those funds would come back to the Board of Education for reappropriation for other health, security, and safety issues. And so I don't know where we'll be on that bid, but if we could manage to pull that off, I think that would put some money, where it's needed. And but anyway, I'm going to open it up for the board to discuss this suggestion, and that's just my suggestion. And like I say, I did talk to some board members today, and they felt like that was a very comparable idea. But we'll start on Ms. Carpenter's side. And Ms. Carpenter, if you will, you can tell us your take on what I've suggested or something else that you think would be appropriate.
Well, I'm comfortable with it. I could, as comfortable as I can get. I mean, we've got so many needs out there. And, I know a lot of members saw some of the other needs. We know what we've got. We're dealing with, for instance, at Royal Oaks. We all saw the pictures with that. We know what we're dealing with safety issues. You all know how I feel about trying to get security officers at Royal Oaks, at Mount Pleasant, elementary, some of those schools. I would love to have SROs if we can't do it at all, and we've got things like that I would see before we do sod on ball fields or something like that. So if and as you mentioned, if we can see a consensus to start with, because I can see where, Blake, something he has bought for, where we say, well, this has been ignored completely for quite a while, and to maybe give something if you can't get everything, to get something. So maybe this is a compromise to start with. And these are older schools, where the other ones are newer schools, and they've got more than what these other ones have. Now, one comment I would like to make, though, some information that had been given to us, I would like to be corrected, because information that our board received from some parents at Central, it was emails that we got. It was saying that that they had that they only had four tennis courts, and every other school, it said every school had 6 tennis courts, and they were the only one that I had 4 tennis courts. That is not true, and I wanted to make sure that this statement gets out. That is not true. We do have other schools that only have 4 tennis courts. I know for a fact that Northwest only has 4. Is that correct? Concord only has 4. So that is a false statement. And so that was in writing, and it said that they were the only school that had 4 tennis courts. So, and that was in writing. So I know that, and there may be some other ones, but I know those 2. So there was some false statements on some of that information we had gotten. So there was some of that was not true, but that one just come right out at me, and I knew that one wasn't. That was not true. But I know when somebody's trying to build their case, we always want to build that case good. I'm guilty of that sometime. But I could go along with that, and I would want to make sure we kind of clarify what we do for Robinson, though. I would want to make sure we've got that pretty much. If that bid comes back a lot lower, that money would come back, and then we could use it where it would need be. If one of these other schools really came back with something that would be a safety or something, we could use it in that area, and I would be okay with that.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter, for your comments. Mr. Kiger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your work and diligence in trying to talk to board members and come to a solution that represents progress instead of just killing the whole thing. I do have some comments that I'd like to make. I'm in support of the proposal, and one of the things, and one of the reasons I say that, Dr. Shepard in his comments tonight used a phrase that I used a lot when I ran to have the opportunity to serve my fellow citizens by sitting here, and I've used a lot as I've gone through and met people and met principals, even tonight when we were upstairs at our reception, and that's a commitment to excellence. I think everything we do, we should have a commitment to excellence. We should strive to do it better than anybody does it anywhere else. And the reason we're even having this conversation is because of Kelly's commitment to excellence, to make sure that she finds everything that we can possibly squeeze to get into this district. And because of that, we had the opportunity to do something that otherwise we wouldn't be able to do. And when we look at having a commitment to excellence, what we've done, and like it or not, we're in the marketplace. We are in the market. There's charter schools, there's home schools, there's private schools. We're in the marketplace. We've got to figure out things that we can do to make our system and our schools more attractive to everybody across the county, because we think we can do a good job of educating them. And what we've done in response to that is open STEM schools at the elementary and the high school. and at Freeze, an IB school. We expanded the Fire Academy at Concord. We opened the Biotech Academy at Northwest, and I could go on. But each time we did that, it was with a specific goal in mind to improve our school system, to make the experience for our students better than what they could get elsewhere. Well, the one glaring weakness that we've had is doing anything for athletics. And that's, a month ago or whenever, at 80,000, well, we've had some things that happen. We made some decisions, and we make tough decisions all the time, but that number is now at 57. And to be able to take that and look at the field house at Robinson and to know, well, the commissioners thought enough about it that they ponied up enough money, that it seems only right for us to at least try to get into the game and provide something for what the parents and the students and the athletic director and everybody went out and tried to do, that we're going to at least come in with something. I can promise you, Ms. Carpenter, that if the proposal we're talking about at $25,000 and we take the 60 that they raised and the 300 commissioners, we're still not there. They're still sitting out there without a field house. Now, 57's probably, it may not get you there either, but at least we're taking something and adding it to it. I think that's certainly the right thing to do. And if we start picking and choosing, well, this school's new and that school and this, that, and the other, it just seems like the wrong way to go about it. And for one instance, I'll tell you that if we want to say, well, we haven't really done anything at Central, and Mount Pleasant's an old school. Well, hang on just a second, because just last fall, Mount Pleasant got $125,000 to resurface their tennis courts. So we can't say that we haven't done anything for them. We didn't do that, the commissioners did. But if we want to be fair and start picking and choosing, we've got to have all the facts together before we start picking and choosing. So the track, and Brian, feel free to correct me on this, the $25,000 we're talking about, that doesn't even fix the track, which is the number one item on their list. Is that right? Is that enough to fix the track?
Right, they had a bid just of about $13,000 something just to do some patchwork in lane one, but to fix the whole track, it would be closer to about $75,000.
Okay, so we're still not there, but the track initially was privately funded, so they raised the money, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm correct on that.
Right.
And then now that's the only synthetic track we have in the county, and they're going two-way, and I think they've said they would host meets so that the other schools can come. Previous boards to ours made the decision, for whatever reason, to build asphalt tracks. You might as well not build them if you're going to build asphalt tracks, but that's what we did. So there are needs. There are other things we need to do. The needs keep growing. We're not going to be able to go back anytime soon and fix all of those tracks, but we have a school now. We have some funding. That's their number one priority and what they would like to do. I'd like to see them be able to do it. Hickory Ridge is it a new school? It's 5-6 years old. It is a new school. But again, previous board and construction and laying out the school, there's no outside exterior storage facilities except for what the parents have built. They built the baseball storage facility, and they are also erected a metal building where some equipment gets parked. Well, there we look at the list that they gave us, and all of that seems like, oh, well, why do you want to do little storage sheds or this, that, and the other? Well, I can tell you as a taxpayer, there's a restroom that we paid for that's heated, has plumbing, it was part of the original design and construction, that has track and soccer and football stuff and concession stuff piled up in it, and it can't be used. So now we've overpaid for the storage the first time around, and we have a bathroom during football games that cannot be used. So again, we have money that we otherwise wouldn't have. We have the opportunity to do some items that they wanted to do and wanted to be able to take care of at their facility. And again, I think it's the thing to do to help them achieve that goal. And Central speaks for itself. They have had nothing since at least when I talked to the AD, the year 2000 was as far as anybody could go back, and they couldn't remember anything happening since then. The field house was privately donated, and even that ran into some issues and some problems trying to get it completely together. But they've got some drainage issues, bathroom issues, bleacher issues, all of that needs to be taken care of. And yes, it's an old school, and I hope we pass this because I want them to be able to do that, as well as Hickory Ridge to be able to do what they want to do. And Cox Mill, if they want to take this money and set it aside and start fundraising, that's fine with me. If we're going to help Robinson on the back end, there's no reason we can't help Cox Mill on the front end. And if they can go to the commissioners and convince them to help along, a couple schools got built without them. All of these schools play the same sports. Now all of a sudden we've got some with field house, some without. It just seems like if we start picking and choosing, then we're heading down the wrong path. And the other reason that I say that, Brian, our AD, Donna does an incredible job of student services, and Dr. Shepard, the administration and the staff in the school where the rubber meets the road is asking us to do this. They ask us to do a lot, and we do a lot. And they're asking us one more time. And Mr. Chairman, I'm in support of the proposal as it is, and as Donna and Brian has laid out before us. And if I'm interested to hear what my fellow board members have to say, but I just think that we have responded in a very positive manner to the marketplace and attracting students and trying to keep the best students that we can, because I know we can send them out to do great things. Athletics is a part of that. We don't just get to manage the band over here, and we don't get to just do English over here. We've got the entire system that we have to look for, and every bit of that is important. Somebody's going to wake up tomorrow, and athletics, that's their thing. Same thing, somebody's going to wake up tomorrow and to go do chorus, and some of the things that we heard earlier that got recognized, and they're going to governor's school. Everybody is a little bit different, and everybody's motor ticks a little bit different, and we have an obligation to make sure that we're fulfilling needs across the board to all of our students. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Kiger. I wanted to say, he, just for the record, he's our liaison for the athletic department. Didn't he do a good job? I think we'll hire him for our lawyer or something. Oh, my goodness. Mark, you better watch out down there, boy. Yeah, he's a strong advocate for them athletics now.
Mark does not have to worry. I have not been to law school.
Oh, my goodness. Blake, I appreciate your comments. Appreciate you doing your good job as our liaison. Okay, Mr. Walter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. For the entire proposal, I have some issues with it. And the issues that I have is we've got this process that was explained to us when we initially had this money. We had all these projects, and there was a committee that was assigned to go through a TRAGO, is that the word? A TRAGO process to prioritize these things. And this, as far as I know, is not on it. So there are other projects that are in that list somewhere that should have popped up to us before, or at least if this was in there, then it should have come to us, but it hasn't. So I'm having a problem with that. That is the whole thing. The other thing is my priority after what happened at Sandy Hook is security issues at our schools. And I'm not convinced yet that we're putting cameras in vestibules. Well, there's still some other things I think we can do, and I don't want to spend this money and not have it available if it's not funded in our next budget. So I would rather not spend it on this at this time. And then thirdly, the state is cutting $2 million off the teacher assistants. I don't think it sends a great message that here we have, 100 people we're laying off, and we have $200 and something thousand, and that's 10 teacher assistants. I know it's only for a year, but I think it sends the wrong message by doing this at this time. Not to say we don't support athletics. And my last issue here, if we are modifying the proposal like we talked about earlier, and it is one-time money and it needs to be spent, I think using projects that benefit all schools, like the Mount Pleasant track, as we were talking about earlier. I guess we're going into a new conference next year. And
3 new conferences.
3 new conferences, and there's issues about not being able to have home or have track within the county. If we have this facility there in Mount Pleasant, all schools can use it, so it benefits all schools. Right. I think that's something that's where I would go first on that project. As being elected here, anything I vote on, I need to be able to justify why I voted on it. And just saying that we give $57,400 to a school just because some other school got this and didn't get that, I can't justify that to the voters who put me in office here without something specific to vote for. If we made a commitment to J.M. Robinson, I think we ought to honor that commitment as well. And then anything else that's maybe a safety issue as far as fixing bleachers. There's some other issues about fence, they're damaged. And then lastly, most of these recommendations, they came up with a list for us on itemized list, but almost all of them said field house. Well, this number, like Blake was saying, doesn't touch the field house. So I would wait until the actual, which had been done at Robinson, where the funds were raised, and then see if we have the ability to help match or help participate in some of those projects. Those are my thoughts, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Walter, where's your bottom line? What's your bottom line? I mean, you saying is your bottom line you support the Mount Pleasant track?
I would support the Mount Pleasant track if
what
we need
degree?
to spend this one-time money, but I don't think it sends the right message at this time.
You don't support the central?
A flat without a project? No.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
If there's a project here that's there, yes, I would support a project, but there's not a, these are fix and upgrades.
Well, what I was suggesting, is we do 25, 30,000. I think Mr. Kiger said 25, but I was saying 25 to 30,000, somewhere in that range would be set aside, and let the school make the best use of those funds. I truthfully wouldn't want to see it kickstart a field house, but you got these other needs out there.
I'd like to,
thoughts.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to see a project that they'd want the money towards.
Okay. Well, we've got to, well, it wouldn't fit within that, but anyway, let's just move along, and then we'll come back. Mr. Harrison, you got your comment.
To echo Mr. Walters, if we've established budget priorities, I'm becoming concerned that we do not adhere to those priorities. Maybe there are many reasons. Maybe I need to be schooled on exactly why that doesn't seem to be the case. And it very likely is my misconception. But in attempting to be as judicious as possible about this, I do support the Central Cabarrus needs, the Mount Pleasant needs, and the J.M. Robinson needs, if that becomes the vote that we take tonight. But in the future, I would really like to hear a proposal to spend funds tied back to the budget priorities that were established by the committee that we had and that we entrusted to identify and work out the details of those actual plans. I'm becoming uncomfortable with, as Mr. Walter says, lack of a plan. And I think we've had plans, but I'm just uncomfortable with the sense that we're not looking back to a plan that we indicated would be used somehow. But the needs do exist at these three schools. Let's take care of what we can while we can. Let's at least have consensus on that, gentlemen, and all members of the board. And then let us move on to other needs. But the public, I respectfully ask all the public and the media to understand, we've got more needs than we have resources to meet. We all know this. Between personnel and capital projects and physical grounds needs, everything is tight and is staying that way. I hope we can go back to process. I hope we can do what we can do at this moment, but get back to a stronger regimen in the expenditure of the funds that we do have. Thank you all, and I really wanted to say thank you to the board, all the cabinet, for your efforts on these matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Phillips.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to say than what these two guys just said. I think it really sends the wrong message to our county commissioners when last month we sent them a recommendation of what we said, here are the highest capital priorities in the district. And now we say we have enough money to do at least one of those, and we're going to instead do something entirely different. I don't think that sends the right message to the county commissioners. When I got up this morning, I was intending to recommend that instead of spending the money as proposed, that we instead use it to fund what we listed as the fifth highest priority in the capital budget recommendation to the commissioners, which is to buy 3 activity buses, which would then be used by all of the school district athletic programs for $268,500. However, in the spirit of compromise, I'm more than willing to support Chairman Shu's recommendation of giving some money to Central Cabarrus and Mount Pleasant, and also the field house at J.M. Robinson. It's not a lot of money, and the reason why I would do that is that when I looked at the list from Central Cabarrus, it appeared that there were several things on there that I would consider to be safety related. I know I, for one, would not want to be a person who has to climb up to the top of the press box at the Central Cabarrus Stadium. And so anything we can do to make that safer would be good. I think there's also some issues with the fencing being too close to the field, which puts the players at danger, and that should be addressed. But that then brings up a whole nother point, which is why weren't these on the list that was provided to the Budget Committee for high priority projects under $200,000? I went back and looked at the list that you provided us. There was not a single athletics related project with a cost under $200,000 on the list. Now, granted, you didn't give us the full list. I'm sure it goes on for pages. We only got about the first 40 or so, but I think, now as the new county athletic director, I think you need to investigate why these valid needs somehow are not filtering up through the Trago process and being presented to the Budget Committee, because I think that they would have made it onto our recommended list for the smaller projects. So, yeah, something to add to your already long list of things to do.
Right.
All right. So, anyway, I think my proposal would be to amend your recommendation, Mr. Chu, to say that the balance of the funds, in addition to what you just were going to allocate, would go to buy 2 activity buses, so that we at least partially address the thing that we said was a high priority need that we sent to the commissioners already.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. And Mr. Tyson and I spoke just briefly, and I told you what I had talked to some of the board members about, Mr. Tyson, and you said that you could work with that, I believe. Is that right?
Right. We definitely so. If you look at the list, it's cut down to pretty much repairs to an older school, storage situations, and field house. Pretty much those 3 items is what it's broken down to. But yes, sir, we would definitely take on any compromise that you guys would vote for.
Well, I appreciate your openness and, your involvement, your commitment and that type thing. And, if we do 25 to 30, let's just round it out at 30,000 for those 3 schools, Mount Pleasant, Central Cabarrus, and up to 30,000, depending on how the bid comes with J. Robinson. And, as Mr. Kiger was talking, and talking about what the restrooms at Hickory Ridge, they don't have a storage building. I would be willing maybe to throw in 10,000 to that and round it out at $100,000 for athletics. Now, if the board will go along with that, that's what, I'm throwing a little something else in there. Because if they're using the bathroom for storage facilities, well, first off, they need to get the stuff out of the bathroom, and they have to have somewhere to put it. All right, so that would be something else that I might throw out there. But, like I say, I'm just one, and, I'll need a motion from the board, to decide what you want to do. But let me hear what Ms. Carpenter has to say, because she's got her hand on the mic there. So go ahead, Ms. Carpenter.
Yeah, I got one question. How old's Hickory Ridge? Why is those bleachers not under warranty? That's what I'm wondering. Why? Because I see where it's saying fix broken bleachers in main gym is costing $10,000. Now, would those bleachers still not be under warranty?
No, not after 6 years. I mean, it would speak to maybe poor quality of installation or material, but no, it would not be under warranty.
How long are they How long are they usually
Mr. Witke
good
might can
for?
address that. I surely don't
How
know.
long are they usually good for?
Mr. Witke, I apologize for.
I'm sorry, but I mean,
No, the question is fine. Normally, we have a one-year guarantee. In some cases, we extend warranties on certain things. Typically, bleachers are simply 1 year. They do get a lot of wear and tear, and unfortunately, we have a lot of bleacher repairs at our high schools and at our middle schools, but mostly at our high schools. You'd be surprised. And it's sometimes in terms of how they're used, but oftentimes it's just the amount of people on them, the kinds of things they do on them, or it just, I can give you a list, but we repair a lot of bleachers.
but they only carry a 1-year warranty.
Typically, yes. That's true about pretty much anything in a school building. There are things like big mechanical equipment, roofs and things that we actually buy extended warranties on. But bleachers, to this point, are not something that we have. That may be changing because honestly, I've been very surprised over the course of the last 2 years about the dollars we've had to put into bleachers getting fixed. And and we buy some of the best bleachers. It's not that we,
That's
try and
what I
save
was,
money
that was
there.
my next question. Is it because we're buying something cheap?
No.
Because I know when you buy, you usually get your money's worth, and that's why I was wondering. That was my next question. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. Okay, board members, are we ready to take action on this? Are there any other comments? Mr. Harrison, you got your finger on the mic. You got another comment?
Only, sir, if you were going to make your comments into a motion, I would second.
I don't.
I beg-
know.
I beg your
don't know.
pardon,
I don't
then.
want
I
to
beg
make
your
a
pardon.
motion. I'd have to have one of the board members make the motion as to what it is. And, if you want to discuss the extra $10,000 for the storage shed, we can discuss that a little bit. But I hope you understand what I'm trying to do there.
And I believe
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Phillips is getting ready to make a motion, but let me just throw out a quick, is there any temperature for, giving Robinson the full amount of the 57? And letting what was, well, I'm just going to tell you, we got 360 plus 60. And then if we kick in another almost 60, that's what, 520? I can tell you, it's not going to get done for 520. It might be close, but some of it depends on, I'm sorry, 420. No, 300.
420.
Mr.
I'm
Tyson,
sorry,
didn't
420.
you suggest today?
Maybe I should
Mr.
go to law
Tyson,
school.
that it may come in 400, maybe 400 a little less, maybe preliminary?
They were looking at $100 a square foot at 4,000 square feet.
Okay, so it may come in 400, maybe a little less, maybe?
Right.
Yeah, okay. Well, they may have to be a little more fundraising.
Yes, sir.
It may have to be, to put the rubber on the road, there may have to be a little more fundraising. If that's the way it happens, that's just the way it happens.
Or go down just a little bit.
Okay, board
Yeah,
member.
Okay,
you know,
well, I
you
just-
buy you buy the pot roast you can afford.
Okay, I guess I just wanted to at least throw out in the spirit of compromise, if and I think Mr. Shue had 30,000 for Mount Pleasant. I'd suggest maybe we go ahead. Again, the commissioners had a high priority. They wanted to fund the field house. So if we kick in, if we have 57, we can kick in. Let's kick in the 57. 30 at Central and Hickory Ridge. I guess if we can find 10 to let them do something with, they'll be thrilled. So anyway, I think I'm in support of the entire measure, but since that's not going to carry, I will wait and hear what the pleasure of the board is in making a motion.
Just wanted, that sounded almost like a motion. I didn't know.
That was
I did
called,
wanna-
that
I
was
did
called
wanna clarify.
advocacy.
Okay. I mean, just procedurally, I know you've had a fair amount of discussion. Under policy 2340, anyone, even the chair, can make a motion. Usually you're the one calling for a motion, but if you wanted to do it. And then you could see if you have a second. If you do, you can vote it. If that does not pass, someone else could then make a motion. So I know I've heard several different proposals. I just want you to all understand, anyone that wants can make a motion. You can see if you can get the 4 votes. You would need a majority of 6 of you tonight, so 4 people vote yes. You've got it. If it fails, the next person can make a motion. That's the the procedural option. So any of you have the right to make a motion and see if you get the votes, and because we've heard several different options. That almost sounded like you were making a motion to see if you had votes.
If a motion fails, is the entire measure then gone?
It does not, then someone else could then-
Subsequent motion can then be made?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, then, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we appropriate the funds that, as you described, Mount Pleasant, 30. The motion will be 57 for J.M. Robinson, 30 for Central, and 10 for Hickory Ridge.
Okay, board members, we have a motion. You heard the motion. Do I have a second to that motion? Okay, without a second, motion fails. Okay, now, do we have another motion that someone wants to offer?
Well,
Mr. Phillips.
I want to ask a question first, probably of Len. When will we know what the cost, the total cost of the J.M. Robinson Fieldhouse is going to be?
I think that we're pretty well wrapped up on the basic plans. We're pulling together some details now. I would think by the next board meeting, we should have a number for you. We're trying to get as accurate a figure as we can, so we're, at the moment, historically, what the architect has done is sort of assume that role and put a number together at this stage of it. What we've been asking is for him to pull in his engineering firms, his engineering consultants, and use them to help develop the bid, if you will, or cost proposal. It's a cost estimate. And so we know a little bit better where we're at. And I would hope that within about 2 weeks, we should have that information.
Okay, and just because all the numbers were lost in my head again, how much is already allocated towards this project? The commissioners put up 300 or 350,000?
300,000.
300,000. The Booster Club has raised approximately 60 is what's left.
Yes.
And you're thinking that it's going to be 400,000 plus.
And just so you know, we have committed, because we've paid the architect, or we're paying him out of those dollars. We also have had to do a survey and soil boring, so we've spent some money, something in the range of $15,000 or $20,000.
Right. I'm just trying to figure out what number to propose here. But I think we could always come back to fill in whatever the missing gap is. So what I would like to do is to make a motion that we allocate $30,000 to athletic projects at Central Cabarrus, $30,000 high school, $30,000 for athletic projects at Mount Pleasant High School, and $10,000 for Hickory Ridge, and also $30,000 for the field house at J.M. Robinson, with the understanding that that may have to be adjusted. And let's leave the rest of this money unallocated at this point.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Phillips, for the understanding of the viewing audience and myself and other board members, would you mind repeating that motion again?
Okay, so it's allocating $30,000 to Central Cabarrus for athletic projects, $30,000 to Mount Pleasant High School for athletic projects, $30,000 to J.M. Robinson for towards their field house project, and $10,000 to Hickory Ridge for the storage project at their athletic facilities.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Phillips, for
So
repeating that.
that's a total of
100,000.
100,000.
You just spent 100,000 if the board approves it. Okay.
We haven't spent it yet.
Mr. Harrison, is that what you're seconding? Is that the motion
That
you're
is my
seconding?
second, yes.
Mr. Chairman, before we vote on that, can I ask Ms. Klutz a question? Absolutely. Do we have any time constraint? Mr. Phillips has said, well, we might want to come back, but considering the source of the funds, is there a time constraint or some sort of deadline that we need to be aware of?
At this point in the decision-making process, I'm okay with this amount of money carrying over to the future period, so you're okay there.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Klutz. Mr. Walter?
What is 30,000 over at Mount Pleasant? What is that going to get us? That doesn't seem to fix the problem.
Well, it'll repair more than one lane, but you're right. It needs about $75,000 approximately to do the thing right.
For it to be used as a meet, patching it is okay, or do you actually need to fix it?
Well, they can patch. Lanes 1 and 2, part of 3 are the main damage to the track, but to redo the whole thing, to take up the rubber that is existing already there and to come back in and prep it and put down new rubberized track on the whole thing to match up perfectly, it would be around $75,000 is what their athletic director has told me going through court 1. But
And I would
we'll
think if we're-
compromise, and if that's all, then
if
to
we're
repair
going to fix
the
this thing,
lanes.
we got to fix it. But
Well,
The 57.4 was all that was left. It started off at 80,000, but that was all that was left for if you divided it up for all 5 schools. So they would, if it was $75,000 to fix redo the whole track, then yes, they would have to come up with a little bit more also.
well, one thing too, I want to remind the board and the viewing audience about is, and we've said it dozens and dozens of times, and the needs are so great, and we've conveyed this to the county commissioners. They know about the needs, and there's going to be needs for replacement schools. There's going to be need for an elementary school in the northwest area. There's just all these needs, but one of the things that will probably have to come to pass is a bond referendum at some time in the future. And that's something that we're going to probably have to get busy doing sometime soon if we're going to have it for the November 2014 public vote there. And maybe at that time, if we can somehow or another put this stuff together and it could all be part of a bond referendum, maybe some of these things could be taken care of. But in the meantime, we've got to put health, security, and safety issues up front, in my opinion. But anyway, irrelevant of what I say, it's a board decision. I know where I'm at, and I have a motion, and I have a second on the floor. All those in favor of the motion as presented, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, let it be known that the vote passed 5-1 with Mr. Walter dissenting. Okay, thank you very much. I hope that'll help some. It's not what you wanted. It's not all you need, but some's better than none. Thank you, Mr. Tyson. Okay, board members, we need to carry on here with the rest of the agenda. We need Dr. Colleen Sain to come to the podium. She's there, and we're going to look at these policy revisions on the first reading.
We had one policy that was held over for first read, and this was supplement selection of instructional materials. There was a question about the board had questions about the American Library Association and the American Library Bill of Rights. I trust that by now you've had a chance to look at that, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Board members, we have any questions? We'll start on Mr. Phillips' side if you do.
No questions.
Mr. Harrison?
No questions.
Thank you. Mr. Walter? Mr. Kiger?
I'm good.
Okay. Ms. Carpenter? I'm good. Okay. Board members, do I have a motion that we approve the policy revisions on the first reading?
so moved.
Mr. Walter made the motion. Ms. Carpenter second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion. Mr. Harrison, you opposed?
Nay.
He did. Okay, so the vote carries 5-1. Mr. Harrison dissenting. Thank you, Dr. Sain. Our next item here, 9.3, is the request by the Cabarrus Soil and Water Conservation District. And Mr. Witke, he's coming to the podium, and we talked about this, I think, once before, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board members, I have with me Dennis Testerman, who is with the Soil and Water Conservation District for the county. We've talked, and I've in rewriting the cover sheet for this request, I've tried to clarify, as Dennis clarified for me, that ownership of the easements would be held by the county's conservation district, not by MMI. MMI is a private entity. And Dennis can speak to this much more eloquently than I can. They have taken over where state agencies have been requested to back off of the work that they've been doing in past years with the Conservation District and owners such as us. And now private industry is stepping in and sort of filling that gap, and that's what MMI is doing. But Dennis, if you would like to say a few words about it, be my guest.
Well, I wasn't here for the work session, so I don't want to plow ground that you've already plowed, certainly not at this hour. Basically, we are wanting to restore Back Creek. We were initially approached by a farmer who owns land across Back Creek from the two school campuses. Very hard to get this work done. Dollars are scarce, as you already know all too well. So it's a godsend when you've got a lump of money where folks that have been negatively impacted wetlands or streams have to pay into a mitigation bank. And so if the mitigation banker can sell this project to the federal and state folks who have the say on whether the project passes muster or not and will satisfy the need for mitigation credits, they would do a turnkey job. One of the requirements for the program, the way it operated before and the way it continues to operate, is that you do put a conservation easement on the restored stream and the buffer just to protect the ecological function of that. Hopefully, till none of us are around having to worry about that project. And so that is a requirement, and we're designated as the lead agency on handling conservation easements in the county. Under the previous program, the way it operated, the state was actually holding those easements. So the state holds the easement that's between Odell Elementary School and Harris Road Middle School. But we would be doing that as this project's moving forward now. That's just a basic synopsis, and I'll be glad to tackle any questions, or I will get you the answers if I don't have.
Thank you, Mr. Testament. I think that the narrative that Mr. Witke prepared for us on our cover sheet there answered all of my questions, and I'm good with it. Board members, do we have any other questions on this? Start on Mr. Phillips' side.
Right. So I'm completely in favor of what you want to have happen here. It's just I don't see it written that way in this term sheet. It's, to me, nowhere in here does it say that the Cabarrus County Soil and Water Conservation District will hold the easement. Under landowner responsibilities number 1, it says sign a binding purchase agreement with due diligence period or an option only on the land adjacent to the stream mentioned above. So this is saying we're selling the land, presumably to MMI. And then on number 3, it says sell and close on the conservation easement within 1 month of notification of purchase from MMI. Nowhere in here is it saying that we're going to be selling this to the Soil and Water Conservation District. Then at the very end of MMI's responsibilities, number 6, it says MMI will be responsible for all monitoring and required maintenance within the conservation easement until the project is officially closed by all regulatory agencies, typically 5 to 7 years. And so my question then is, and then what? If we've sold the land to MMI, can they turn around and sell it to a 7-Eleven and they can put a store in? I mean, what? I think we need some clarification here as to what's going to happen, because a lot of us may not be here when this thing is finally wrapped up.
Back to me? Okay, let me see what I can do with that. My eyes are starting to glaze over with some of, look at the fine print here. We're talking about a relationship between a grantor and a grantee. So the land would stay in whatever ownership it's in. One of the properties is now in the county's ownership. One is currently in the school system's ownership. Ultimately, the way things proceed, the school system ultimately will own both of those properties. So we're talking about the owner granting an easement to the holder, the grantee, and we're proceeding as if that's going to be Cabarrus Soil and Water Conservation District. So the language of selling is a little bit misleading, though. It talks about the $1 per acre. That's, some of you know more about that than I do, but that's some legalese way of transacting these. And I don't think I caught, there were several different points in there I tried to address that one was the one I was hanging with the best. So come at me again if
Well, maybe Mark, you can say, is there a way that we can change this so that it reflects what Mr. Testament is saying? Because right now, number one does not say we are going to grant an easement. It's saying we're going to sell the land.
Right, I would agree with you, Mr. Phillips, but it does seem like you could change one to say that we would sign a purchase agreement for a conservation easement with the Cabarrus Soil and Water Conservation District, and that would accomplish that. I do think, your other question was what happens at the end once MMI is done. And I don't know, that's a good, I don't know the answer to that either.
and again, this is a transaction. We have the consultant here with us as well. So the way that these, and I'm not just saying just this particular one with the mitigation banking, but typically the way we were doing it before when the state was driving this process, the landowner still ultimately is responsible for that land at the end of the day. They're responsible for whatever taxes are on it. They're responsible for whatever maintenance is needing to be done on it. So that, as you are now, I think the good news out of this is that a restored stream is a lot easier to deal with than one that's not restored. With the amount of flood water that's coming out of this drainage area, Back Creek reaches way over in the western part of Mecklenburg County. And I've watched this stream since I came here. Back Creek was one of the first problem areas to get on my radar screen, and it's continued to degrade over time. So it's not, with the kind of things that you've been wrestling with tonight, bleachers, how long do they last, whatever, it's a difficult decision to be in as an official looking at scarce dollars. But I think you've done your due diligence to try to improve the state of that stream, to restore it so that maintenance needs will be fewer, hopefully a lot more minimal in the future. There's no guarantee on that, but.
Thank you, Mr. Testman. Mr. Phillips, did you get your question
Well,
answered?
I think, now that I think about it, if we make the clarification on number one on the owner's responsibilities, that what we're doing is we're selling a conservation easement to the Conservation Board, then I think it's pretty clear that when MMI finishes with all their tasks, the ownership is now with the Conservation Board. So that solves the problem. What then?
Right, it's your land, but they've got
They have a
is
permanent.
a conservation easement typically a permanent conservation
Yes,
easement?
for these
or-
purposes they are. It's very similar to what we've just are wrapping up at Cox Mill Elementary School, where there's an easement on the 100-year floodplain there. It's still, the ball fields that are there are being maintained by the school system, the county, whoever. We're holding the easement and making sure the conservation values are upheld.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Testman. Mr. Harrison, you have your comments, questions?
Mark, has this document been reviewed by legal?
I looked at this last week. I saw this document, and before that, Len had shared me kind of a general template document that MNI had used.
So our legal has reviewed this agreement?
Yes.
And had inputs?
Yeah, and I think that the comments by Mr. Phillips to clarify, it was my understanding what you'd be selling is the conservation easement, but I think we should clarify that in that first paragraph under our responsibilities to make it
and that will be done?
clear. Yeah. I would suggest if the board is interested in voting on it, that you do it with that express direction, and then we'll revise paragraph 1 on landowner responsibilities to make it clear that that's who the easement's going to.
And is this $1 per acre, or is this 1 acre of land, therefore $1? How many square feet, how many acres are we talking about? Are we
Your
talking about
legal
$1,
counsel-
or are we talking about multiple dollars?
Your legal counsel can, I think, fill this better than I, but I understand the dollar is just sort of a no.
It's nominal consideration.
Yes,
You do want
yeah.
some value.
It's for the
I actually
transaction
think-
and not for any.
Right. And
But how
actually,
many
I think it
acres
can
is
just be
this?
$1. It can just be $1. In other words, it doesn't have to be $1 per acre. It can be $1. But there should be some dollar exchanged in exchange for giving the easement for recording purposes.
And that's normal procedure for a county-to-county entity like that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Walter?
Item number 5 there says conform to terms of the conservation easement, including keeping school children out of the easement during the construction and afterwards. What is that going to cost us? I mean, do we have to build a fence? Is it, what does that mean?
There's quite a bit of distance between the schools and the easement unless you've got kids down there doing what they shouldn't be doing, which is a concern that you've constantly got going on anyway. I don't think I wouldn't anticipate that's going to be a major problem.
There's not a requirement for a fence? Or
No.
And then do we address the road issue that was going through that area?
That was, we talked, and I think it was brought up at the commissioners' meeting, that there is the bridge from Raging Ridge Road going towards the Stallings. And the question just came up of whether or not this would need to reflect that new bridge being constructed and how it interfaces. But you did tell me that obviously MMI is here, they can explain it, but that they do work to those elevations and address those as the conditions require.
They're aware of that, and when this was discussed at the county commissioners work session last week, that was raised there as well. County, from what I understand, is a major driver on that road, and my supervisor is.
So what is the answer? Are you going to cut that part out of this easement? Is that how it works? Or?
Typically, yeah, it would be cut out. There's a provision for a boardwalk between Cox Mill Elementary School and, between Harris Road Middle School and Odell Elementary School that was part of an agreement with the developer before the schools were even built, and so that was also cut out. So a boardwalk will be through there, and it's outside the easement so that you don't have any interference. The road here would be similar.
Okay, and you said the landowners on the other side of the creek have signed up for this?
They've already signed an agreement similar to this one, yes.
Okay, that's already in place?
Yes. Okay. And we're contacting additional landowners to get the length of project that we need to be effective.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. Mr. Kiger.
I'm okay with the bridge has been addressed, and that part of the easements has been taken out, and with what Mr. Phillips talked about with our board attorney making that provision known of exactly what we want, then I'm fine with the rest of it.
Thank you, Mr. Kiger. Ms. Carpenter, are you okay? I'm okay. All right, board members, do I have a motion that this request by the Cabarrus Soil and Water Conservation District for the Board of Education to enter an agreement with Mogeson Mitigation for Back Creek Restoration Project in Harrisburg be approved with the suggested change from Mr. Phillips in reference to the ownership of the land? Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Harrison makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Phillips seconds the motion. All those in favor say aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, thank you, guys. Ms. Monroe, motion carries 6-0, and we'll move right on to our next item, and Mr. Witke stays at the podium for this item. This is 9.4. This is for the bids for the Concord High School weight room, and so, Mr. Witke, we're here for you.
Thank you, sir. As soon as I find all my paperwork. I'm hoping, and I shouldn't say I'm hoping, I know that Eileen was able to post for me the bid tab for this project and some additional information regarding the motion language. And what you have before you, excuse me, is the bid tab. Excuse me, and what I want to explain is that, number one, the low apparent bidder, GE Construction, and these are done alphabetically, but it turns out that the first and second bidders are the first two, thank you, that we'll be talking about. GE Construction was low, so low that we were very worried about their bid. We queried them. It was very difficult to make contact with them. We had a problem with their bid because it was an inappropriate bid bond that they provided to us. And after reviewing that, the bid security, I should say, after talking with their references, and after looking at more detail, or asking for more detail about their bid and their, were they concerned about being $120,000 low, most of the answers pointed to the fact that we didn't feel they had they didn't have a very good firm understanding of the project. Two, that their experience was predominantly residential with a limited amount of industrial work, no school work. And three, because of the inappropriate bid security, we have denied them claim to the project, and we are recommending we move to the second bidder, which is Holden Construction. And I did have communication from the gentleman who is in charge of GE Construction, and he said that he understood our denial of his bid, and he accepts that. So we are recommending to the board that we move to Holden Building Company. That name sounds familiar because they are building our new gym addition at Northwest High School. Their bid is over the amount of funds that we have available in the budget at the moment. And so we're recommending, and I'm looking for the language, can you go back to the language part of the request? Thanks, Mike. What our recommendation is that we accept the Holden's base bid plus alternates 2, 3, 4, and 5. And also at the same time accept a group of value engineering reductions in the cost of the project to basically, excuse my search for information today, request that we approve the budget at $314,210. That is still within the budget of the project that exists and meets, the needs, the overall needs of the project. I can go into a lot of detail or a little bit of detail. There are several things that we're going to be removing, most of which we feel are very reasonable reductions. Those are, we're going to be, they had a brand new weightlifting floor, a rubber floor in the project. We've decided to take a credit for that of $8,700 and reuse the existing gym floor or weight room floor that we have in the current building. And we talked with the principal at the school, and she was fine with that idea. Another savings we're going to take is that we're going to self-provide rather the landscaping and grass, so basic landscaping. We'll save $1,300 there. We will, instead of going with the finished brick, we're going to propose a cut or ground, a split-faced concrete block, similar in color, but just a different material from what the existing building is. And that will save us about $2,135. And the last one is a large one. It's a $12,000 reduction in this project cost. It's $12,000 for the relocation of the main entrance, electrical service entrance to the school. We have to relocate that around this building site. What we're proposing is that we use funds available from another, there's two ways of going. We either have funds available from another QSCB project, or we have funds available from the project that was just discussed earlier, the tennis courts at Concord High School. There's a surplus of funding there, and we could use the $12,000 from one of those projects to pay for that relocation of the electrical line. So those are the major changes. It will require, budget amendment to move those dollars, but that is what our recommendation is to the board, so we can proceed. As you can appreciate, this is a time-sensitive project. We've been pushing on this since we got the go-ahead, and I think we do have a very solid contractor in Holden Construction, demonstrated by their work on the gym at Northwest, and we feel that they can meet the completion date. I think it's of late August for this project, getting as close to when school starts as possible. So we would recommend moving forward if the board finds that acceptable.
Mr. Witke, I appreciate your due diligence and catching right off the bat, the deficiencies in the low bidder there, because that's so important. And incidentally, board members, that was one of the reasons why it was late getting the figures to us. I mean, we just got the bids in on Wednesday, May the 8th, and it took a couple of days to get the verifications and all of that stuff that they do before they present this to us. And when they found out what they found out, they had to dismiss the initial low bidder. And so that took time. But anyway, you did come in just the nick of time, Mr. Witke. I appreciate you getting it to us so we could at least discuss this tonight. But now, just for clarity, the motion, the recommended action that's in here is the 314-210. That is with the engineer value there that we took away, 24,135, and then adding the 3345 for alternates 2 through 5. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, board members, do you have any discussion on this item? We'll start on Ms. Carpenter's side. You know, we've been dealing with this for quite some time also, but we've got the bid, we've got a contractor, and our job tonight is to support this or whatever. So, Ms. Carpenter, it's if you got any comments or questions. All right, Mr. Kiger.
Just, I want to make sure I followed your numbers correctly. There's the tennis court resurfacing project, there's money left over that if we throw that in, it covers the moving of the electrical service. And that, with the value engineering, keeps it underneath the budgeted amount.
For this project, yes, sir.
Okay.
Absolutely
So
correct.
that's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Kiger, for the clarification. Mr. Walter?
No, I'm
Mark.
explaining it. I just said we do
Mark.
need a budget amendment.
Explain again what we did here.
Wait a minute. We got to,
Sorry.
Let's hold up.
sounds like we got more information
Let's
coming.
hold up here.
The county explicitly told us when they allocated these funds that we could move within certain areas. This is not an area that they
Clarify
indicated.
funds, which funds?
The,
And what
one-
school?
one-time allocation funds, they said we could do tennis courts and tennis courts, we could do security cameras and security cameras. They in no way, they were very clear in how we could move those dollars and how we could not. That is not a way that they allowed us to move those dollars.
Well, we can't do that then.
No, sir.
No, we got to comply with what they ask. Okay, so,
I guess we're running out of time, but I understand the implication and they're very clear. But when my parents used to tell me something, the more clear they were, the more I wanted to ask for something above and beyond that, just to say, are you really serious, or are you just telling me that you're clear? So, I mean, can we ask for it, or are we out of time and we already know the answer?
I have not been aware of the need to ask, so no, I have not asked. Could we? I assume we could.
How much are we talking about?
Well, we're talking $12,000, but
12.
$12,000, ma'am. But there is approximately, according to the most recent take, about $75,000 coming from two projects within QSCB. We can certainly move those dollars. This is a QSCB-funded project. We have the ability to move that money by this board's decision. It does have to be agreed to by the county commissioners, but it's the same package of funds.
It sounds like that we would have an easier time asking for that than we would the other.
Yeah,
It would
Ms.
be.
Kelly's right.
And at the end of the, as the QSCB shakes out, we're looking at we're kind of waiting for all that to shake out anyway, and then see what's left, and then fund whatever final QSCB project we can do, is my understanding of what we're doing. As long as it's done by April 2014.
14.
Yes, sir.
Just don't ever want to forget that date.
No.
thank you once again, Mr. Kiger. Mr. Walter, you want to carry on with your comments?
Yeah,
questions?
Mark, can you explain exactly what we've done here with not selecting this lowest bidder?
Yeah, we've determined that they are not, we have to go with the lowest responsible bidder, and we determined, based on the three things Mr. Witke mentioned, that they are not responsible. In other words, they submitted a non-complying bid bond, and then they weren't adequately able to explain their bid. So we have the ability.
They can't come back to us and say, hey, this is...
No, anything's possible, but I'm comfortable with the rationale to say that we don't think they're properly qualified.
Okay, that was...
Well, you know, he talked with them also, Mr. Walter, so that sort of clarified that.
Is Holden a local company?
No, they're out of Greensboro.
Well, for example, Carpenter and Lyle's Construction, they are local.
Yes, sir.
I take it that the licensure number alone would designate the headquarters or the locale or locality of the company. I know we're trying to be lowest responsible bid, but I do wish in the future we could factor in lowest responsible local bid, which won't always pan out, but for example, Carpenter's is not that far off from Holden, and again, you were making some other adjustments, I understand that.
Yes.
But I really would strongly urge the board if in the future, for expenditures like this, we can factor in somehow whether or not a company is local.
I'd like
Maybe there's some issues that I don't understand.
I think we need clarification from our
Well,
attorney.
legally you can't, is the short answer. I can give you a longer one, but.
Dang it.
There's several.
Strike that suggestion.
There's several, well, it's something a lot of boards have looked at, and the Institute of, the School of Government's published some papers on it, and for the state government, they do have a local executive order that says you're supposed to look at North Carolina companies before you look elsewhere, and so some boards have said, hey, we should do the same thing. But the law is pretty clear, at least for publicly bid contracts like this, that the law says we have to take the lowest responsible bidder, and we can't choose preference based on, oh, they're in Cabarrus County, they're not, or even in North Carolina, they're not. Obviously, these companies are both in North Carolina. You really can't do that. The only time you could do that would be where you're not subject to the bidding requirements, which are really small, informal bids, typically under $90,000, sometimes even less than that under our policy, where you could give some local preference because you're not governed by the state bidding statute. But here, for construction in these amounts, we're governed by the public bidding requirements. You really don't have discretion.
Well, that just stinks.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. You know, we understand you're learning as you go, so that's all right. No problem. Mr. Phillips, you have your comment.
You said that Holden is also the one working on the Northwest Cabarrus Gym project. Are you confident they have the capacity to do both these projects simultaneously? Because it is vital that both get done on schedule.
Yes, they, in the business of building, very often the problem with building what would be considered relatively small building addition to a gymnasium and remodeling, the difficulty is to keep your crews engaged. They're traveling, and in some cases they're coming from Greensboro. They're using other local folks too, but the problem is that you find a firm you want to work with as a subcontractor, and then you kind of have to bring them in and out. It's very inefficient. If you have another project to send them to, that can work actually better for you than just doing a single project at one time. And Holden we found them to be excellent to work with so far. They're on time with their information. They're on time with their pay requests. They do a good job so far. And I was remiss in not acknowledging that we had a lot of help from our attorneys, from Ken Michael's office and Mark's, as well as from the architects in deciphering all this in very short order. So,
Thank you, Mr. Witke. Are there any other comments from the board reference this item?
I will make a comment. I did ask Mr. Jolly tonight about the progress of the gym, and he did mention how pleased he is with Holden Construction and how well the site superintendent communicates directly with him on day-to-day activity of coming and going to keep him in the loop. So that I was very pleased to hear that. So just as an FYI to the rest of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Kiger, for your comments. Okay, board members, it's time for me to go ahead and call for a motion. The motion would read that I'd like to call for a motion that Holden Building Company be awarded a construction contract for the Concord High School weight room in the amount of $314,210, which includes the base bid of $335,000 plus an additional $3,345 for the recommended bid alternates of 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that figure of $314,210 would be with the proposed value engineering of $24,135. Do I have such a motion? Okay, Mr.
Second.
Kiger, I have a second. All those in favor, say aye. Are any opposed? Okay, the motion carries 6-0 with Mr. Kiger making the motion, Mr. Phillips seconded. Mr. Witke, we're going to go on with the last item here on our agenda tonight. This is the request for the approval of Select Buford and Goff Associates. And so you've got the podium.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, we have 5 schools in which we are preparing to do some very significant additions or complete replacements in some cases of their security camera systems. What we did as part of that process, as the board had suggested and asked for, was to select firms that we felt were specialists in this area and could do this work well, and we asked them to submit a response to a request for qualifications that they did. The 4 firms were Buford Goff Associates, Mosley Architects, Thorborn Associates, and Vertex Technical Consultants. There was a 5th firm that chose not to submit a response. They were AECom out of Virginia. All of these firms have quite a bit of experience, but as we got together a group of, we had the construction committee members, Mr. Blake and Mr. Shoemaker, Dr. Shepard, myself, and Dave Burnett from my office, who sat in and basically reviewed the proposals from these consultants. And I think it was close, but Buford Goff certainly, by reputation, by experience, by a number of years in the business, and simply by sheer volume, has done an enormous amount of this work. And so we are recommending that firm be hired as the design firm for these 5 projects. We've talked with them initially about putting together a proposal for fee, and also about meeting our very, very intense schedule. I've had the conversation with them on the phone. I'm waiting for confirmation in writing. We did talk about it, and I mean, I think there are certain concerns that they have about getting information from us quickly and turning that information around into drawings. But they said the key is really bidding this work and getting it in the contractor's hands, and then processing whatever paperwork and shop drawings and all of that quickly. And they're committed to doing that. They indicated they could put people on the job immediately. And so we feel pretty comfortable in recommending them to you this evening. If we cannot come to an agreement, negotiating a fee with them, then our recommendation would be go to the second best firm in terms of our review, and that would be Mosley Architects.
Thank you, Mr. Witke. Just one quick question before we go to the board for questions. The estimated fee of $80,000 not to exceed, is that a traditional, normal? That's just a little bit less than 10%. Is that pretty much normal?
Yes, it is for this type of work, and I'm hoping that we won't even spend that much. But it gives me some negotiating room with the consultant, and at the same time, I think it does meet their overall needs based on my initial conversation with them.
Well, I hope that you'll try to whittle it down a little bit, but you know, that's your area right there. So, okay, board members, do I have any comments or questions? And we'll start on Ms. Carpenter's side.
Okay, and I wasn't here at the last one, so I may have more than most. Now, is this the total amount for the cameras and everything that we're looking at, the dollar amount up here?
No, I'm sorry.
The 897,000.
That was the total amount.
And
Yes,
this would be for all new stuff in these.
yes.
And one of the questions I have, and it's probably, would this be connected to, is this just all in-school stuff, when I say in-school cameras, or are we going to have any connection at all to any of our police departments or anything?
That's key in the development of these projects. That was one of the questions that they were very interested in finding out initially was, do we have any of those systems up and running now? And we do on a very limited basis. And it's because we're moving to the digital age with our newest designs that we can do that. But it's our hope that we can not only continue to do it where we are doing it, but also blend whatever our new schools our new projects are doing with the existing systems, and do tie into the police and sheriff's offices.
Because I know a lot of that with the county, when I was with the county, a lot of when we were looking at radios and everything, that was always one of our things we were always looking at and wanting to make sure when we were doing technology that we were going in that way to make sure that when we were buying stuff or doing things that we were going that way to make sure that we could get technology that was going where we could communicate that. I know with the EMS system, when they were setting up that, trying to make sure that everybody was talking with everybody else. And that was why I was wondering, with this technology, it'd be great, if when money was ever available, just to have that one big panic button that could be hit to say, hey, we need it, we need that help now.
In theory, everything working correctly, a police officer driving in his squad car up to the school could dial up the school cameras and view anything that he needs to see or she needs to see from their squad car.
So that technology is what we're hoping to have
Yes,
with
ma'am.
this. Okay, thank you.
Good questions, Ms. Carpenter. Thank you. Mr. Kiger.
Just one clarification. I think one of the reasons, and you may want to comment on this, that we're sort of erring on the side of caution on the design fee is the lack of as-built drawings for the schools where we're going. So we know that the design cost is going to be higher going into it than it normally would.
A good point. And as you know, Mr. Kiger, we were talking about that a little bit on Friday. And the reality is we have some electronic documents. We have some hard copies that we can scan and make into electronic files. But, for example, at the Glenn Center, there's little or nothing. I mean, we have a few old blueprints and nothing more. So there's a lot of work to be done in that particular instance.
Thank you, Mr. Witke. Mr. Walter.
I appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Harrison.
In the design of these cameras, Mr. Wiki, has it ever been considered to put some kind of heavy metal cage around the camera such that it would not obscure the photographic capabilities of the camera, but still would protect the camera? Because schools, such as they are filled with footballs and baseballs and other things that kids like to maybe throw around sometimes, and that a cage around the camera, again, not blocking the view of the camera, would protect it from any kind of mishap. Is that feasible at all, or has that been considered? I would think that the investment of the camera would warrant kind of protecting it from that kind of vandalism.
I think as we get into a more sophisticated system, clearly in the areas of detention facilities, courthouses, those sorts of things, protection enclosures for cameras are very common, and they add to the cost. But you will, somebody sprays a camera with paint, you might damage the lens, you might damage more than that. In an enclosure, you simply have to either replace the glazing piece or clean it, and so it's sometimes well worth the investment in the enclosure. We will look at that.
I'd think the, I don't know, $50, $70 heavy metal frame around it would be well worth the effort when $5,000 or $10,000 camera could be put out of commission pretty quickly by some kid trying to make a name for himself.
Yep. It's a very good suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Phillips. Okay, board members, any further discussion, questions?
And popped up. If I know that the ones that we are looking at here are all for our high schools, will any of these documents be able to be kind of saved or duplicated if we go to do them for our middle or our elementary schools, if we get kind of a basic plan?
That really is our whole concept. We certainly have a good set of documents currently that we've done these, I want to say 5 or 6 newer schools with, and we want to work with this new consultant, make the best set of plans and documents out of that, and then carry that as our standard going forward. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. Okay, board members, you ready to vote? All right, the motion that I'd like to present is that the board approve Buford, Goff, and Associates Incorporated to develop the set of construction documents, an estimate of probable construction cost, and participation during the construction phase for the camera upgrades at Central Cabarrus High School, Concord High School, the Glenn Center, J.M. Robinson High School, and Mount Pleasant High School, and the fee would not exceed $80,000. And of course, Mr. Witke's going to work on that, he said. So, do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Harrison, Mr. Walter made the motion. Okay, second.
Second.
Mr. Harrison, second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 6-0. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the board to convene in our closed session for this evening, and closed session is pursuant to General Statute 143.318.11A6 and also 143-318.11A3. May I have a motion that we convene in closed session? Okay, good night, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you back in the month of June.